It all started with a Fox News poll. You see, there's been a certain gubernatorial election going on that has heated up over the past couple of weeks, and that happens to be the Virginia gubernatorial election. And, well, it's gotten quite interesting. You see, over the past couple of weeks, Youngkin has taken this election from being essentially a Democrat shoo-in, where Terry McAuliffe was basically going to walk away with it with him being 6 to 8 points ahead, to now being at a statistical tie with the very same candidate. And on top of that, there was a Fox News poll that came out that showed Youngkin in the lead by a whole 8 points. And while I find the idea of this election completely flipping from a shoo-in for the Democrats to a shoo-in for the Republicans in all of 3 weeks very entertaining and very funny, I didn't buy it. I mean, come on. Am I really supposed to believe that at the exact same time the race is just tying up, Youngkin's going to run away with it in all of a day? I mean, a lot of the other movement in terms of the polling has been fairly consistent and obvious, but that one seemed to come out of nowhere, and so I didn't think it was real. I mean, it just looks ridiculous. It looks like some of the polling that came out of 2016 or 2020, except instead of being favored towards the Democrats, it's favored towards the Republicans. And hey, what do you expect? It's a legacy media poll. It's Fox News. It's not all that surprising that their polling would be weird and not at all consistent with what seems to actually be going on. At least that's what I thought, until the events of a couple days ago happened. And oh, those events were quite interesting. You see, it all starts with a certain Twitter post that claimed that there were white supremacists who were evoking the imagery of Charlottesville standing around a Youngkin campaign bus. And immediately, when you look at this picture of the people, there is already so much wrong. I mean, let's just start with the fact that they all look like FBI agents. I mean, the wearing the sunglasses in the middle of torrential rain. Did you really have to go that far? And on top of that, did we really have to have the white supremacy of diversity quotas in the form of the black dude who's standing front and center in this group of white supremacists? On top of that, there was almost nothing to suggest that these people were actually white supremacists at all, other than the fact that they were holding tiki torches and wearing dress shirts. They didn't say anything that was racial slurry or had anything to do with white supremacist talking points, or at least not that I know of, because there was no footage of these people. There's only 5 of them, and the only evidence we have of their existence happens to be just a couple of pictures and tweets from random Politico journalists who happened to see them in front of a campaign bus in the middle of rain. Yeah, the story at first glance was just absurd on its face, and, well, the Democrats were immediately identified, because it turns out that all of these people were actually Virginia Democrat staffers and supporters who had public Twitter accounts with their faces on them, which could lead to them being positively identified with the people in these posts, which I guess sort of explains the white supremacy of diversity. I mean, it's not as though they could really ignore their woke diversity quotas, and if they were just hiring out people, they would be pretty racist if they didn't put the black guy in front and center on the white supremacy hoax. So I guess I understand. Though, really, what the real question should be is why they didn't just get some of their own homegrown white supremacists. I mean, why didn't they just get progressive, Medicare for All advocate, CNN contributor, and Biden supporter Richard Spencer to do the job? I'm sure he'd be perfectly willing to go through this whole political rigmarole. I mean, he's a Democrat partisan, so it shouldn't be all that surprising that he does something to this effect. And that led the discovery of this hoax landed to a bit of a stir-up on Twitter, where there is a Tiki-gate hashtag trending for a while before immediately being dogpiled on by Twitter's bots and scrubbed from the interwebs. It went pretty viral at the time, and it turns out that it was not actually the Virginia Democrats who were doing this, but the Lincoln Project. And the reason as to why they put up the white supremacists of diversity in front of a Youngkin bus? Well, to remind people that Youngkin represents the white supremacy of Charlottesville, which isn't a particularly believable excuse, especially since it seems to me that there's little to no distinction between this being done by the Lincoln Project or the Democratic Party at this point, considering how incestuous those organizations are. And this all leaves me with one singular burning question. Why? Why were they so desperate as to pull this sort of obvious hoax? I mean, they later came out and said it wasn't actually meant to be a hoax. It was meant to be a social commentary. But certain tweets from the Lincoln Project themselves put a little of a damper on that particular narrative. And so you have to ask, why are they so desperate? Well, here's the answer. Terry McAuliffe is quite possibly one of the dumbest candidates I have ever seen. You have to understand, a lot of why McAuliffe has utterly destroyed himself has almost nothing to do with what Youngkin has done other than remaining consistent on these issues, and instead has more to do with McAuliffe's own stalking points on the issues that he's lost on. And the main issue on that has to be schooling, because he has had the most baffling position possible that parents should just be completely uninvolved with their children's education. Why? You should just leave it up to the states to teach your kids whatever they want to teach your kids, and you should have nothing to do with it, including putting this sort of thing on campaign signs, and even doubling down later in interviews saying that everyone clapped when he said it in the debate.
But Chuck, we have a great school system in Virginia. Dorothy and I have raised our 5 children. Of course, parents are involved in it. The question should be, could an extreme Republican bill that would allow parents to take books off of shelves, should that be left in the hands of the parents, or should it be left to the school boards and others who do this every single day and focus on it?
They would argue that bill is not saying...
As you saw in the crowd, everybody clapped when I said it.
Well, everyone might have clapped in that selected audience of that debate, but not everyone clapped when it came to the general public, because in the aftermath of that particular debate, your polling utterly tanked, and Youngkin's polling went way up. It turns out that that debate is sort of the flux point upon which the entirety of this election's narrative has been twisted. It has gone from a Democrat easy win, because remember, Joe Biden won this state by 10 points, to Terry McAuliffe could very easily lose this, and you know what? The Fox News poll doesn't look all that ridiculous anymore. I mean, if they are this desperate, on top of bringing in people like Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, and even the narcissist in chief himself, Barack Obama, over to Virginia to campaign for the dude, you must believe and must understand that they are completely and totally desperate. I mean, to put this into perspective, they went through trying to commit a hoax and convince everyone that all of Youngkin's supporters were white supremacists in order to convince the general public that Youngkin was a white supremacist supported by white supremacists. And the way they did that was by making sure that they fulfilled their diversity quota. And that's where I'm going to leave you guys off. If you enjoyed that video, check me out on other platforms. My links to BitChute, Parler, my Minds page, my Gab, my Getter, my Brighteon, my Rumble, my Odyssey, all that stuff is down in the description. I suggest you go check it out. I'm KelKidman. This has been Breaking on the Daily, and I'm out.